Hi, I'm Alistair Boyd. How are you going? I was going to talk a bit about transformational change. I'll tell a bit of a story about myself in a bit, but in context, I was reading something from a marketing person. He was talking about how about 10 years ago, he read a particular book, and that book changed his life. So a transformational change. I had a very different experience. But I was just thinking before coming on this that there's a number of different sorts of transformational change, and I'm looking for a different sort now for myself, and that's really a change of behaviour, a change of habits, a change of the way I want to spend my time and living and working. And the idea there is that will be a controlled change, or to change by decision and then make habits, and then hopefully I will live in a way that makes me happier than how I have been recently. And that is different to what happened to me before, and that is different to what happened to the gentleman I was just talking about. I think there are other kinds of transformational change. I was going to say some people have like a religious experience or a spiritual experience that could be instantaneous or effectively instantaneous. That is a major change in their life, or a different kind of change by circumstance, sometimes a tragic thing or an accidental thing that is transformational. And I'm not just really talking about a physical change, but rather the way people live and the mental attitude that goes with it. So some of this is about a mindset change. A lot of the things I've been reading recently about different lifestyles and things have to do with mindset. Now, when I say different lifestyles, I still mean within my society, the way things are now, my house, my family. I just mean how I choose to live. And those things are often a mindset change. The thing that happened to me many years ago was a massive change, more than just a mindset, and effectively instantaneous. And it's really the reason why I know people can change. They can have a major change and it can be effectively instantaneous. And I know it because it happened to me. When I left school, I was not a particularly happy fellow, and life had actually been very, very good to me. There's no real reason for me to have been suffering mentally, but that's or emotionally, but that's really how I was. And I spent a year off between school and university working on my parents' property, their farm, and I really was not near a social group, and I really was not very happy, and I also was not trying to develop myself. And the local town was some distance away, and I didn't get there very often. And it was in fact a period of over 3 months where I didn't leave our farm at all, and I saw nobody but my immediate family and the workers on the farm. For my 18th birthday, my parents, who loved me very much, gave me a ticket to New Zealand. And they must have loved me because it was a return ticket. And in New Zealand, I had then an aunt and some cousins, my first cousins, one of whom I'm still extremely close to, and the other cousins I love dearly but don't see them very often. But I didn't know them very well. I had met them. And I went to New Zealand and I stayed with my aunt and cousins, and I was going to get on a bus trip that I had pre-booked and I had paid for around the North and South Islands of New Zealand, and I highly recommend that. I love New Zealand. But I wasn't in a great frame of mind in my overall life. I was happy to see my aunt and cousins, and I'd had a good time for a day or two. And then I was going to get on this bus to travel around New Zealand. And I knew nobody, and I was very shy. I could talk to the people I knew, I could crack a joke, with people I knew. But really, I didn't want to make a fool of myself. I didn't want to. I think embarrassment was my greatest fear. And along with that was shame and lack of self-confidence and disappointment in my own performance at school and so on. And I was lonely. And I was going to get on this bus of other people, young people, ages basically 17 probably to 30. And the intent was to have a good time for a couple of weeks with people I'd never met before. And I said goodbye to my aunt at the car park, and I climbed up the steps of the bus, and I looked down the corridor, and all these heads sort of stuck out from their seats and looked at me. And there was, I don't know, the bus was half full, 15 people looking at me, and the expression on their faces was all, I hope this is a nice guy. Who's this? What's he going to be like? But they were just open faces, not hostile, a little bit worried, because everybody's thinking, have I made a mistake going on this bus trip? I'm going to be stuck with all these strangers. And I looked down that corridor of the bus and looked at all these faces, and I said to myself, I'm never going to see any of these people again. I can do whatever I like. And that was it. Not shy anymore. That was it. Not shy. Talk to people, introduce myself, made a fool of myself sometimes, made some silly mistakes, told a lot of jokes. There's a very odd thing, I have to say, because we would sit around a campfire at night wherever the bus stopped, and people would tell jokes, and I would always have to warn people that all my jokes were clean. It's just how it was. Anyway, that became a joke in itself, but I was amazed how many jokes I knew. Hundreds of them. And they were almost all clean. Some fairly juvenile, I have to say. But that was it. I could make a fool of myself. I could talk to any of these people. Kissed a girl. That was pretty good. And it was a phenomenal change, and had a really good time for several weeks. Made quite good friends whom I never saw again. I did write to one or two of them, and we did correspond a little bit, and that was really quite good. But that was an instantaneous change by decision in my head. It wasn't just mindset, because I put aside a lot of the internal feelings and repressions that I'd built on myself. I wouldn't say I forgave myself for everything, because I'm still like that a bit, but that was a massive change that improved my life from pretty terrible internally to largely in control with the capability of achieving things. I don't think I had a mental illness or anything like that. I'm just saying that I had some forms of depression, and some of it was self-induced. But I really improved massively, instantly. And I'll compare that to the gentleman I was reading about, and he was reading a book, and over the course of that book, which he read in one afternoon, that opened his eyes to many possibilities. That is a different kind of change, but it is just as transformational. It really probably brought out aspects of his self and confidence and behaviour and intellect, or the application of his intellect, And I wouldn't say I've had an instantaneous change on those things before, but I have read things where I've suddenly understood something that's massively different. What I'm saying to you is it is within your capability to change. There are some things that you can't get past. I'm sorry to say, if your leg's fallen off, that's not going to change. But does it change the way you live around that aspect? Perhaps it does. If you've got some other problems, there are solutions to some of those other problems. But you can have a change where you say, I am changing. This is what I want to do. I don't approach it with an intellectual approach, but I didn't approach it with a plan. That's really normal. Such a good system. I didn't approach it in an intellectual way with a smart plan, but it happened. And I'm saying that that can happen